What's up, guys? Welcome to the MrMaple Show. We're here to answer all your watering questions. I'm here with Elizabeth.
Hi guys.
So Elizabeth, do you think watering is important?
Watering is very important, especially to keep your maples nice and healthy, Corbin.
Yeah, I mean, the first year I did this, watering was something that I had to learn how to be on top of, and also how to do it right too.
It can take a lot. You can either do too much, too little, or you have to find the right in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, that's something people can overwater. I fell victim to underwatering, especially during those hot summers. And you work those long days, you come back home, you forget to water the plants a little bit, and they don't like that.
They do not. That's why today we're going to give you the best tips on how to make sure your maple stays watered. Is the best way to say it.
Yeah, so what are things that go into this whole category of watering your plant?
Well, first we want to just make sure that you get a healthy plant in general. But then we want to look at things like we'll talk about the pot, or if it's in the ground, we'll talk about drainage and about just like the environment you're putting your maple in.
Yeah, sounds great. Let's hop right into picking that location for your plant.
So depending on what plant you get and where you're going to put it, full sun, shade, half sun, half shade, really is going to change how you water. A full sun plant is going to need a lot more water because it's going to dry out very quickly. Whereas a plant that's in the shade is going to need not as much, but it's still going to need water.
Yeah, and something to think about whenever you're picking that location. Obviously, shade and sun are going to be a big factor, but also think about the contour of your landscape as well.
True.
Sometimes we get dips in the landscape. Sometimes we have stuff on hills, and that can affect either the water running off very quick or the water puddling up at the bottom of the dip and really keeping maybe your plant a little bit too wet.
Yes, and that's why soil composition is going to be very big on planting your maple. You don't have to be super technical, but if it's in a pot and you have a coarser mix, you're going to need a lot more water because that pot's going to drain fast. So you're going to want to make sure that you completely soak the soil through and that it's nice and wet, and you're going to want to do it a little more often because that mix is so coarse. Whereas if you're putting it in the ground, it might hold a little more water. The best way to test that is to dig a hole and fill it with water and then see how fast that drains. Ideally you want 1 to 3 inches an hour, and if it's just sitting in there, then we're going to have to amend our soil within that hole.
And for things in a container, you can also pull out the trusty finger test as well, which is just, sticking your finger in the dirt, seeing if it's still a little bit wet or if it's bone dry. And with that medium as well, I try to think of things like bonsai. Obviously, in bonsai you use a lot, bigger granules of material, which allows that water to drain very quick through the soil mixture, which does promote growth, but it also makes you have to water a lot more. And that could be sometimes twice a day, maybe even 3 times a day if it's very hot. But one thing you want to do is you want to let that soil dry up, because it will force, microfibrous growth to happen in those roots and make that plant search out for water, which is going to make you have a bigger plant in general. If you're gardening in a container, remember that you don't want to be hitting the tree's soil with such a force where you're knocking off that soil off of the roots, because it can cause a little bit of dieback in specific plants. So that's something. Get a nice water hose attachment that kind of breaks up maybe that jet stream or that force of water, because that's really important in getting that growth and maintaining the health of your plant.
Our number one tip in MrMaple, and especially with Japanese maples, is no wet feet. We don't want to see pooling or puddling. That's why you water and then let it dry out and then water again.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely had to get used to at the beginning.
Yeah.
Obviously, during the summertime, that soil is going to dry out a lot quicker. But during the wintertime, don't be afraid to give it a couple weeks in between watering. You know, the sun is definitely that main component of drying out the soil, and it's going to be a lot cooler whenever you know, that winter time comes around. So you're going to get a lot less frequent of watering sessions whenever it gets into different seasons as well.
That's true. In the winter when it's outside, you have to worry a little less about watering. That tree's going through dormancy and it's interacting with the environment and the moisture in the ground. So you still want to keep an eye on it, but water not as much. But if you have a pot and you've moved it inside, you're definitely going to keep an eye on it. And I think it's about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks in between watering.
Yeah, that's definitely what Matt and Tim recommend.
Yeah.
Another thing to be weary of is if you're in a container, that is going to be exposed to a lot more surface area. So things like the wind and the heat hitting the pot is going to make it dry out a lot quicker. So
Very
don't
true.
be worried to water those container plants a little bit more than you would an in-ground plant.
Very true.
So another thing to look out with whenever you're maybe setting up your garden is companion planting. And what I mean by that is you don't want to put plants that are going to either A, compete for water, or B, have different water criteria that they need to make for growth. So, you know, don't put a lot of maybe wet feet plant right next to a maple, because then you're going to be constantly watering and it's going to put stress on that maple.
Something vegetative too. So a lot of people, you know, it's summer, you want to put those pretty flowers in your garden. You have to think about it, like petunias, you know, do they get water from the soil? Yes, but in hot areas and sunny areas, you're going to have to water those because they're very vegetative. So you just have to be mindful about your planning when you're putting your maple in the landscape.
Yeah, definitely something you want to plan out. Also, other trees are going to have different constraints than a maple. Say, you know, a redwood, you put that can handle a little bit more of a wet area, or even a bald cypress, you know, could grow pretty much in a lake or whatever.
Yeah,
so,
boggy area.
knowing these things about your plant is going to be important for how much water you give it in the garden. So that's something that's always interesting to look at.
And the last thing we will mention is, you know, in the summer and the spring you're fertilizing. We have to make sure that we are giving adequate water with the fertilizer. We want to make sure that fertilizer disperses, and we don't want to burn the roots or put enough on that it's going to burn the leaves as well. So if you're fertilizing, make sure you're reading those instructions and you're adequately watering your tree to move that fertilizer around.
Yeah, watering can be something that's overlooked a little bit. You can imagine it to be simple, but there's lots of nuances to it, and there's definitely an art form to watering, you know, making sure that there's that consistency, and also there's a lot of trial, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and it really is, there's so many things at play whenever you're bringing that all together. And that just makes, you know, gardening fun. Everything is a different challenge, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. And watering is a huge aspect of gardening.
It very much is.
Well, I think that's about it for our short little video on watering today. Try to stay nice and hydrated out there, guys, especially in those hot times of the year. But thanks to Elizabeth for hopping on this video.
Thank you.
And thank y'all for watching. MrMaple Show, providing daily content every day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You know, share it with your gardening friends, because, hey, maybe they need a little tip on how to water some plants. But thanks so much, y'all. Remember to take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.